This is a 3/4 profile. We're starting out with a stock photo of a horse. And we'll start out by scoping it on the paper, essentially drawing a large gourd shape that represents the outer perimeter of the critter. And then, since we're dealing with a lot of different angles and planes, I put in the planes as well, so that we have a sense of where a shadow is going to fall and essentially the shape of the horse's head, which is actually quite complex. And this gives us the framework to work with. Position the eyes, try to get them parallel across the head. I always like to throw the ears in.
I'm pretty happy with that.
Gives us a good point of reference. And now we'll start essentially what is a line drawing, kind of working the outside shape of this critter. Get some definition to the nose area there, extending down into the mouth. Three-quarter profile is a little more challenging than a full 90 degree or full face profile like we did on the first one, because you're dealing with elements of foreshortening and the same landmarks on the figure are there. The prominence behind the eye, the salt cellar, the eye itself, where the nose fits, but everything else is a little bit distorted. You've got more freedom in terms of how you represent stuff, but there's a little bit of a challenge associated with getting the proportions right where they need to be. The eye centered on the jowl, that's distorted a little bit when you turn to the side. And it's easy, if you're not careful, to wind up fattening or compressing the whole muzzle area and creating some serious distortion. Slowly build up these landmarks, the nostril and the eye. And that kind of anchors everything. Most everything else is with reference to those features. And it's easy just to pull it together. Easier to pull it together. Shading is a little bit different because light is hitting the face at a different angle as well. So on the full profile we had some serious highlights around the zygomatic area, and with this one, not so much. You'll see that it's kind of in shadow. I always like to fill out the eye and get that in place, so kind of it's nice to have a feature finished as you work the rest of it. Horse trivia: the horse's eyes are larger than its brain, which makes sense. Being a prey animal again, he's got to see what's out on the terrain, and with speed and all that muscle and all that ability, doesn't need much of a brain. If he doesn't understand something, you just get out of Dodge. Once again, use all of this line detail and then come back in with shading. You could just leave this as a line drawing and be done with it, but I will. I'll flesh it out and shade some areas in. Ears are a lot of fun. They're actually very very artsy, nice shapes. Pole area there, trying to identify that mass and get it defined. Here we are at the hinge area where the jaw connects to the skull. Right above that is our friend the salt cellar again. And as you may have noted when we did that, laid out the planes, this is a nice angle that follows the shape of the skull back and wraps up to the ear. It's kind of a trick to get the shading in to represent that receding line. There we are. I like to leave a little spot of light just to represent the liquidity of the eye. Now we're capturing some of the shading that comes off of the bony structure of the face. And the definition around the nose, that soft muzzle area again. Another piece of trivia, your basic racehorse, they now offer a Breathe Right nasal strip for racehorses. So you can open up the nostrils on a horse and essentially turbocharge him on the track. But that's just a straight tube that where they thrust air in when they flare their nostrils. They're turbocharging. There's a heavy gland right below the ear and behind the jaw that creates a little bit of a swelling, so it tends to obscure the clear demarcation of the jaw area, around the hinge of the jaw as it goes back into the poll. And that's a little bit of a trick to represent. But this fellow's coming along
Your favorite
okay.
painting is still here, so you still have a chance.
At some point we'll
Really?
get rid of all the little construction lines that we put in place initially and
That's funny.
deal with the horse alone.
Yeah, yeah.
There we go.
Well, it was definitely outstanding. Artist.
Darkening around the throat latch to represent shadow.
Well, you couldn't miss it, that's for sure.
How's everything going? Did you guys break your lunch? Did you all break your lunch? Yeah.
And it gets a little tricky here once again, courtesy of the musculature and that gland that's behind the neck. At some point I'll soften all of that and work it in. There we go. Now we're getting rid of all of those construction lines that were there at the beginning, getting down to horse. Using the eraser to draw with, adding a few highlights, bringing some of the highlights out. Finishing up the ears. Once again, a few more highlights on the forehead area. And some cleanup. One of the things that helps create a sense of the profile here, the three-dimensionality, are the surface details, the veins that run along the muzzle area and the face. Putting those in. bit overstated here, so we go over those with the eraser as well. But, well, that surface detail tends to really define the figure. Finish it off. Highlight around the nostril a little bit. Nice thing about graphite is pencil and eraser, you can just work this character until the cows come home. At some point I'm going to call it quits, simply because I try to limit the time on these videos. And we'll give them a little forelock here. Use the hair to kind of define the contour of the head.
Oh, well, yeah.
Boy, looks like he's
Yeah.
dealing with a bad hair day
Yeah.
right now, but we'll clean that up.
No, I haven't talked
Oh,
about
I counted 10 20s, and I forgot to put the number 10 in the total, and so I was $200 short.
Oh, yeah, but
That's
I saw that
Maine
it was
here.
all. It was
Yeah,
all-
we fixed it. So.
Okay.
If you remember the photo, this is a bay horse, which is essentially
And then I woke up to see the night
dark
that
brown
Saturday
with
night,
black mane and tail.
right,
Oh.
and I emptied the drawers, and
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it's
a
like no
direction.
stretch. It's just so rough. You've got so much work here.
So where did all the people go? The crew is not in there.
Eating lunch, I think.
I'm trying to find Roger.
We're
and I-
blending again,
Oh, I just saw him.
blending stuff in.
That's just what Janet said too.
Oh.
It's like one of those things, oh yeah, just,
Yeah.
We are now doing what might be called dinking, just finessing, working transitions from one detail to another here. Highlighting the musculature around the face a little more. Highlights again over the eyes, around the eye. Back to the hair salon, work on that a little bit.